Well, what's going on, everybody? Alyssa Orange here in the Picture Nation studio, joined by our good friend Brian Holland, who is at his studio in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And we are here to talk about the battle for the Golden Boot. Of course, Arkansas and LSU, fingers crossed, as of right now, is still scheduled for Saturday at 11 a.m. Brian, good to see you. Let's talk about this game. And just, you've got an LSU team that isn't technically having the season they want. You got an Arkansas team that, yes, some people are overperforming. So how do you see this matchup?
Yeah, it's sad we're not going to be able to see you there in person, but it is 2020. Yeah. So, but that's the way it's felt for this whole LSU season. We kept hearing about the new guys that were stepping up because LSU recruits at this elite level, right? Mm-hmm. Well, the guys that were supposed to step up, maybe a little, little too young, maybe a little too fresh to maybe assume some of those roles because, we saw even with the massive haul that went to the NFL draft, we saw two guys that could have gone easily in the top 15 of next year's draft opt out of this season. And Jamar Chase, he was the best wide receiver in all of football, won, of course, the Blitnikoff Award, and then Tyler Shelvin. He's a little overlooked, but it was really funny. He came to campus at 380 right out of high school. I mean, big fella. Coach Joe famously said that he was telling his mom and his grandma to take the rice out of his gumbo because it was just too much. The big fella could still move. Had beat like a ballerina, even at 380. He was beating guys on that great offensive line. Guys like Lloyd Cushenberry, who are right now with the Denver Broncos as a young pup, really emerged last year because he dropped like 40, 50 pounds, got to about that 330 playing weight, and was one of those like scary LSU defensive linemen of the past, right? Mm-hmm. And then so we thought, okay, he put a full season like that together, and he really set the table for linebackers to emerge like, of course, Patrick Queen, Jacob Phillips, who went in, made big plays, and really down the stretch kind of solidified that LSU defense after the debacle at Ole Miss last year, and really kind of changed that team, changed that defense. Grant Delpit could come up unblocked. And then all of a sudden, you don't have one of those big guys who really sets the table for the defense, and the defense looks completely different. I know you've probably seen that, Alyssa. Mm-hmm. But, you can have playmakers on the outside, but the game in the SEC is still won in the trenches, and they don't have guys like that who have really emerged. And I think that's why you're seeing maybe some of those linebackers who were supposed to emerge, and now they're having to take on those extra blocks, those extra bodies. Just hasn't worked out and kind of had a little bit of a snowball effect. And you saw that at Auburn. We were really, really hoping to see maybe another game in between this. Obviously they're supposed to play Alabama. But it's almost, in covering the beat, it's almost like we haven't figured out. And it really, I think it starts up front on both the offense and defensive lines. They just haven't looked like an LSU offensive line or an LSU defensive line, and that's where it starts.
What do you think about this Arkansas team, maybe watching from afar when you can? They're 3-4 right now. Arkansas fans would argue they could be 4-3 right now. But, the way that Felipe Franks has kind of helped kind of step in and take over that quarterback role with consistency, what Sam Pittman's been able to do, how impressed or just what are your thoughts are about Arkansas from afar?
It was really interesting to hear Coach Joe talk on Monday, and he said he had already talked to Sam. And so that kind of surprised me because, you ask him on a Lane Kiffin game week, and they aren't talking at all, and they're friends.
Yeah.
So Coach Joe talking with Sam Pittman, and Sam has already talked about how Ed Orgeron has really paved the way for guys like him who have plenty of football knowledge, and they can get it done. But I think also what Coach Joe has shown Sam is that you hire the right way. Mm-hmm. I looked at really, you talk about a Briles running your offense. I don't care who the first name is, right? There's a lot of offensive knowledge. I remember covering Texas Tech back in the day and having to play those elite Baylor teams who probably should have made the college football playoff one of those years. And so they know what they're doing on the offensive side. And then obviously Barry Odom on the defensive side. I really like the setup. As long as you can hire good people, I don't care what business you're in, you have good people working under you, things are going to go right for you. And so maybe that's why Arkansas is a little bit earlier. That's what I equate it to. I haven't been able to see every game, But man, you get a veteran quarterback back there, and you get some guys up there who maybe have a little chip on their shoulder. And you hire the right guys to motivate them. That to me has really been the difference for Arkansas this year.
I want to ask you this question, and I know we've asked you before in the past, because we think Arkansas and LSU have two very different looks at this game. Obviously, it's a trophy game with the boot trophy, and some people say it means more to Arkansas than it does LSU because they're not Alabama, they're not A&M. This game got taken away from Thanksgiving usually. What are your thoughts on how this LSU program is looking at this game and this rivalry in their eyes?
I think it's a complete different view because I've covered both Les Miles and Ed Orgeron. And Ed Orgeron, look, we can knock these coaches for their coach speak, but I really do believe that Coach O goes, we have to go 1-0. I'm not looking at anyone else this week. This is who I'm going at. And, aside from this COVID year where, we heard one SEC coach saying that he prepared for 3 different teams in 1 week. Coach O really, if you tell him what the opponent is and where you're going to go play, he really is going to only focus on that. So I think, he really did try and turn the mindset when he first got here. That's been prevalent in I think some of these results, and in that you have to take Arkansas seriously. And I didn't necessarily see that in practice with the Les Miles administration. Coach O has certainly done that. I remember 2 years ago, I was talking about this just yesterday with some of you guys, going up there and they ripped off all their shirts because they had heard how cold it was going to be, and you never went in the cold. It always gets ugly in the cold in Northwest Arkansas in November. And so they went out and they just ripped off their shirts and they made it a mindset. Coach O has made this a mindset that you don't take any one night lightly, and especially when you're talking about a trophy game. And by the way, this, the most dangerous trophy in all of sports. I never want to carry that thing. I was so anxious with the camera as they're walking out, please don't drop this near me because you cut my foot open with that thing.
Yeah. Well, I know Arkansas fans want it back up on the hill. It's been since 2015 since it's been here. But I want to ask you, just from your perspective, LSU hasn't played in 2 weeks. A lot of, issues going on with COVID-19 and having to delay and postpone games. How do you think mentally this team has handled all of that?
It's going to be tough because I think if you had this senior leadership, you had guys like Joe Burrow, who, famously they would hop fences in the summer to go run routes. And that's why he was so in tune with all his wide receivers, because they've been doing it over and over and over in the South Louisiana heat. I'm hoping that you see some of that rubbed off on that quarterback room, but you're not for sure because, that quarterback room now is Miles Brennan, who's waiting to get back from an injury, probably not going to this year, and then 2 freshmen. Now, I think that these 2 true freshmen are really, really good in their mindset, and some of the people that I've talked to and getting to know at least one of their parents, and then the other one, their parents was a Super Bowl champion, and Brad Johnson, of course, Max Johnson here at LSU. But TJ Finley and Max Johnson, they're different. But as you saw on the road at Auburn, that freshman experience, you can't bypass it. You can't skip it. Even Joe Burrow in his first year getting back to football didn't look like the Joe Burrow of last year. So it's something that you have to practice. It's something that's kinesthetic and that you have to get your hands on and actually experience. So it's going to be interesting what that leadership looks like. I'm not expecting a great first half performance, but at the same time, these guys are going to be chomping at the bit because literally, they haven't played football in a real football on a real football field in 3 weeks. So, for all intents and purposes, there might be even some nerves, some jitters out there. The first half could be really, really kind of a roller coaster. That's really what I'm expecting from a young team.
Yeah, my last question for you, with LSU getting 2 games already postponed and the SEC's talked about scheduling and what they want to do you see LSU playing both that Florida and Alabama game, or maybe just focusing on that Alabama game because it's an SEC West opponent? What are you kind of hearing down there with what they want to do in regards to the rest of their schedule?
Well, I think it's no secret that the SEC wants LSU Alabama to happen. So LSU Florida is a great game, but having Alabama have that extra game is obviously big for I wouldn't say big for a berth in the college football playoff. Obviously, I think Alabama could still get in without the LSU win, obviously. But I think it's also mutually beneficial to the TV partners, and that's big too. You know, making sure that they're good, because if they're good, then you're good. Kind of like mom is happy, then everyone's happy inside the house. So
Right.
you want CBS and ESPN and all those guys really, really happy. I think they're going to bend over backwards to get it happen. The way that Coach Joe, his tone in talking about it as well, kind of reflects that as well. So I think they're going to do anything and everything. You know, how they get that done, I don't envy that seat. And obviously, planning and scheduling has been tough for all of us in 2020.
Well, I do know this. I don't know a whole lot, but I do know this. LSU 2-3, Arkansas 3-4. Someone is going to win a game on Saturday and get back to 500, and I know both teams want it to be them. So thanks so much, Brian, for the time. We really appreciate it. And, man, yeah, I wish you could come up here. We could go out to Theo's or something, but maybe 2021.
Yep, absolutely. Can't wait.
Thanks, Brian. I appreciate it.
Bye.
Thanks for watching this Pig Trail Nation report.